Open your mind.
Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday the 7th of September 2014. And I'm sure the people on the chat room probably have noticed that there's a little bit of a change. We've updated the chat room. And just a couple of changes, nothing too major. We might have to iron out a few tweaks with it, but the chat room is basically the same, just an updated version. So we'll have a bit of a play, I think, during the show on that. But good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well. We have a guest on tonight. The chap's name is Finbar Markey, and he's from County Louth Land League, and we're going to be talking about that and what's going on. But before we do that, let's find out what the communication channels are.
Mary, communication channels, please.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Thank you, Mary. 046 927 1212 is the number for the studio this evening. You can also ring any evening. You will probably get the answer machine. You may even get a human. You might get Mary. You never know. 046 927 1212. If you're going to ring in from outside the Republic of Ireland, it's 00353 469 271212. We also have the chat room on the website as well. As Alan mentioned, it's the updated chat because we were having some issues with the other one, time lags and all sorts of little gremlins. So Alan has done some magical wizardry during the week. We put on his Harry Potter cape and fixed it. It's a new updated version, so there's loads more smileys in there for you as well. So plenty to see and do on the chat.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Okay, and we're back. We do apologise for that little outage there. It's an issue we're having our end, and we just need to try and figure out exactly what's going on. But we do apologise, but you are back. You are listening to OYM, and hi to everyone on the chat room. Again, apologies.
Yeah, thanks for your patience, guys. We're going to have to sort that problem out. We do feel it's a driver problem, which we need to sort out. So I'll try and have a look at that during the week. Just busy. Anyway, what we were saying was we have our guest is a chap called Finbar Markey, and what we normally do is we normally go through Alan's week and Steve's week, and then we'd actually bring the guest on. But because there's a couple of things that are kind of relevant to what Finbar is working on and doing, we thought it would be better to have Finbar come in and then kind of comment on the things that we've been talking about. But we'll get some background information off Finbar first regarding the Louth Land League, and then we'll actually go to the questions there. So good evening, Finbar. How are you?
Hi guys, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all. We just had a bit of a technical glitch there, as it happens.
It gave me an opportunity to have a wee smoke. I'm not complaining.
Oh, that's okay. No problem at all. No problem. Listen, thanks a lot for coming on to the show. Much appreciated. Before we go to the questions and the stuff we're going to talk about, we normally do Alan's week and Steve's week. Do you want to tell us a bit about the County Louth Land League and what you do?
Yeah, the County Louth Land League, I guess, is an affiliation both to the historical Land League of the 1800s that was set up in 1879 down in Mayo originally, and that in 3 years achieved all of its aims and goals. But it's also affiliated to the modern Land League that's just starting to develop around the country at the moment, and there's been some high-profile activity, such as the harvesting of a farmer's crops last week, also assisting people who are on the point of eviction, but also trying to get them before that, and offering advice and support about how you can stay in your home for as long as possible. And that being part of a wider strategy to try to bring a resolution to this debt crisis, as it's often called, this crisis, both at a public level, as in our public debt, but also more importantly right now for the Land League, at a private debt level.
Exactly, and not caused by us, may I add, and you know that as well as everybody else, caused by the bloody government.
Yeah, I think we were, when I say we, I use the collective Irish we were part of the issue, because for the global elite, if we want to call it that, to be able to profit from us, we must give them our labour, and we do that through a thing that we call money. And that's what money is. It's a promise of labour, not necessarily your own labour, depending on what kind of a system that you're in, but it's a promise of labour, the sweat off somebody's brow. And so the scam would not have worked had we not existed and been a part of it. So we're not outside of it looking on saying how terrible that is that happened. We must realise our part. But our part, I think, when we do realise it, should empower us, as it did in the past and as it did in the Land League, as I say, back in the 1800s.
Yeah, I know, and we have to start empowering ourselves. What we do, Finbar, is we go through the bits and pieces that happen during the week, and we'll get your comment on them as well, because I think there's a few things in there relevant to what you're doing. So, I don't know, Steve, if you're ready?
I'm always ready.
Okay.
I was born ready.
Take it away.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to say, Finbar, is welcome along, and you're most welcome. Just when you were talking there about a brief introduction about what the Land League is, the Louth Land League, and what they do, what you guys are doing. I do actually have a web page up here in front of me called the DundalkDemocrat.ie, and they actually gave you a good write up. And the one thing that struck me is one line here. I'm just going to read it out because I think it's fantastic. Because there's a lot of people jumping on bandwagons, and it seems you guys are not. He says, we ask for no fee and are motivated by the desire to bring people together and to support and defend each other. That's just beautiful.
Yeah, well, it's simple and it's to the point. Quite often, we live in a world that has a perception of being very complex. And I have and this isn't boasting or anything, but I have a doctoral degree, a thesis. And my thesis examined organisational culture change in health services. And the outcome of the thesis, in essence, is that common sense, simple common sense, is usually the solution that works in complex situations, you know. And the simplicity of what you've just read out there is what we're asking for: people to come together and support each other and to create change. It's as simple as that. You know, sometimes I say to people, and I have to laugh. People, you know, we're talking about writing up policy documents and things like that, which we do and which is important. But if 1 million people just decided for 500,000 for one day, let's all go to Dublin and say we're not going home until this mess is sorted out. That's how simple the actual solution really is. You know, but unfortunately the penny doesn't drop. I think we have this propensity to look for complex solutions and look for doubts in the simple power of collective action.
I think that's the Irish attitude, though, because a lot of people, I find it here, and I'm sure you do as well, that when you explain, well, people know what the problem is, but when you're trying to explain a solution, they just look for all the hurdles that some of them probably aren't even there, and they, like you're saying, they believe that it has to be a long-winded, legal, very well thought out solution. Where, and you're saying, and I agree, sometimes common sense prevails. It's just the simple solutions work.
Yeah, and even the fear of collectivity in terms of the powers that exist in the status quo. But I think that fear, or that propensity to think, oh, things are too complex to be sorted out so simply, I think that isn't accidental. You know, we have this hyper-reality, as Baudelaire, the philosopher, would have discussed. This hyper-reality is put in front of us through our TV, through our social media now, that everything is so complex. You know, that you need government, you need Deloitte et Touche and other companies to be advising government. You need all these things to be happening, and that we can't stand up to that. And there was a great argument between two contemporary philosophers, one of them still alive, about what actually gets people to rise up. And the two philosophers concerned was a guy called Habermas, who's still alive in East Germany, and who lived under the Soviet Union, and Michel Foucault, who died of AIDS in the late 1980s, was a French philosopher. And Habermas said, if you're honest with people, and if you can reveal how terrible the government is, how intricate and omnipresent and complex it is, they will naturally rise up. But Michel Foucault said no. If you do that, you'll instill fear into people. And a better way to approach it, he suggested, would be to ridicule the government, show how banal and human they are, and how their main motivation usually is self-interest and greed, and how that can be so easily overcome. And I think, you know, that is the argument about complexity and simplicity. And I would err on Michel Foucault's view of that, you know, we need to start showing that these guys are not clever at all and they don't know anything. And for those people who believe that we need them for their complex minds, let's start proving that they're not complex at all. And the complexity is not needed. There's certain answers that are simple answers. They're hard to swallow, but they're not hard to grasp. Sorry for that lecture.
No, you're grand. I mean, I think you've just summed up everything. You may as well say goodnight now, because I think you've summed up everything. I mean, that is really it in a nutshell. I mean, we do have these people who are controlling us and governing us, and we believe, obviously through media and TV and schooling, etc., etc., we believe that we need them, that they're like our oxygen, and without them we will just die. And it's a sad reality. But Finbar, I want to just read out the first thing on the list here, because I know this is something that you probably will have a lot to say about. But it's about the couple who've been evicted from their home to a couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
Just want to make people aware that Vin at People's Internet Radio has set up a donation button on the website if anybody wants to make a donation to the couple. I think we all seen. I don't know. Actually, I think it was it briefly shown on mainstream, but I know we seen the videos here on YouTube as well, where they were actually kicked out of their home in their pajamas, and I mean that's just so wrong. If you had been there, Finbar, what advice would you have given them? Would you have said don't open the door, or
I think that the people who were there and were present, and there was some members of the Land League there as well, did the right thing and they took every correct step. It's unusual to be able to find a couple who are willing to be vociferous and speak out. And I know that they were placed in a horrific position. And I think usually people who've been in the area of trying to prevent evictions now for a few years have developed a certain sensitivity, that they're not into putting anybody up there, that if somebody has a bit of fight in them and wants to open up about what's happened to them in the public media, that they should. There was no toing and froing, there was no violence there, and I don't think. See, again, this is at a personal level, and I'm not speaking for any movement. I have been involved, and I was one of a number of people around the country who a few years ago were physically trying to stop evictions. But now, and going back to that argument between Habermas on the one hand and Foucault, I think if there had been a wide media coverage of violence on that doorstep, I don't think it would have done the movement any good.
Yeah.
Because most people are hiding in the shadows of their kitchens and they're afraid of pieces of paper. And they're certainly afraid of the idea of hustle and bustle. So if I and other people in the Land League usually go out, whether it's a receivership, whether it's a sheriff, and usually we can prevent, once they get in contact with us in time, we can prevent it coming to a situation of a sheriff anyway. That we would prefer, what we say to authorities now is, listen, there's no need for hustle and bustle. If you want to do something, take it to the court. Seek some kind of a motion or an order. But there's no need to terrorise this family and a neighbourhood. Because, again, we have to understand, and this is broadening it generally, that every state depends on violence in the long run. And our community at the moment are not used to seeing it. And I'm not sure whether all those people, and remember, the Louth Land League, just in terms of what we do at a very local level, is we run clinics throughout the county on a weekly basis, and we also try to attract. There was 135 people up in court for eviction 2 months ago, or 3 months ago now. 5 turned up. There was 80 there, 80 cases listed for last Monday. 5 turned up. Luckily, through an appeal, we've located another 6, but we still have 70 odd to still find. And to get those people out, and to get them just filing defences, to block up, as I said earlier, this strategy, this part of a wider strategy, to block up those courts, for that to happen, I don't think it's useful. And I think what happened last week with that couple, in terms of there was no violence, there was no pushing in, there was passion, and there was assertiveness on the part of the Land League people that were there, and others, but there was no violence. And I think, at the moment, anyway, and in the context of where we are, and what we're trying to do, which is to get these people out and standing up for themselves, I think a peaceful settlement which involved courtroom involvement was a proper outcome.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I think definitely going on the violence route, it's not going to work. That you're going to play straight into the hands. Although we kind of do get very angry at what's going on, and sometimes people do want to lash out. That's the last thing that we need to do, because the mainstream media will just jump on that, and then they'll just blow it out of proportion, as they normally do, because they're not supporting the people, they're supporting the government basically, and their paymasters. And I like the saying, and this kind of applies to the Gardaí as well. You can't have two masters. You either support the people or you support the government. And if you support the government, don't expect the backlash from what you get from the people.
Well, I am happy with the Garda couching themselves in a neutral stance, not being for either side. Because the Garda's function there is to ensure that there's no breach of the peace on either side. Now, I have seen in a number of situations in Wexford and other parts of the country where the Garda have come down because receivers and different people or sheriffs or bailiffs have arrived. And once you make clear, generally, now you will have the personality coming in with the Garda, as you call it too, but generally once you make clear that you are not here to breach the peace, and you're asking the Gardaí to ensure that the other side do not breach the peace by using force. The Gardaí usually don't want a scene either. So if they don't want it to come on the people's side, as in get rid of the bailiffs or receivers, at least if they can stay neutral and ensure there's no breach of the peace, and that will mean the status quo will be maintained. The person will remain in their home, and whoever it is will have to go into the court for further injunctions. And that's where you can start playing the court game.
Right, okay, well that makes sense. I'll tell you what, we'll crack on with the other bits and pieces that we need to read out, and then we'll go into more detail about that. Absolutely. Because one of the things I'll be talking about is kind of doing a similar thing. The next thing, and this is just stuff that's been in the news that we're reading out, and we're going to bounce around different things, but we'll get your opinion on it anyway. Now, I don't know whether people know this, but there's a chap up in Northern Ireland called Stephen Clark. And he's a parent. He's from Louth, County Kildare, and is being held in Northern Ireland for attempting to protect his children from Wi-Fi. He is forcibly being given psychotic drugs following his protest against exposing his children to microwave radiation in the classroom. And if you're into Twitter, there's a hashtag called #FreeStephenClark. Now, when I seen this story first, I couldn't really believe it. That somebody, a parent who's concerned about the Wi-Fi, because we've talked about this on multiple shows, and we have 2 shows coming up. One is going to be Ollie Johansson coming on the show, he's an associate professor in neuroscience, and he's coming on in a few weeks' time. And we have a couple of other people going to be coming on, and we've had Barry Trower on, we've had Dr. George Carlo on, we've had Dr. Michael Kelly on. All these people telling us about the dangers of Wi-Fi, and funny enough, I did get an email in on a particular website I run from this guy down in Limerick. I don't think, did I show you yes, I sent you the email.
You did, yeah.
And basically, he was just blabbering off saying, "Oh, this is a lot of hogwash and it's silly and all that kind of stuff." So I just kind of made a statement saying, "Well, I've actually spoken to these people X, Y, and Z, and here's the qualifications. Go and check them out and see what you think. And maybe you might learn something. By the way, what's your opinion based on?" I just want to find out what his opinion is based on. If he has something that's actually better than what I've given him, then brilliant, I'll take that on board and have a look at it. But these people who generally shout off don't really have a background in any of the technology. I've done no research, but they just have an opinion, and that's what I felt it was, just an opinion. And I haven't got an email back off him yet. So, if he's out there listening to the show, by all means send us an email back, and we'd be more than happy to have a look at what information you have. Steve?
Yeah, but I mean, just kind of jumping back on point again. So this man, Stephen Clark, he's been given these drugs. I'm guessing it's against his will or his wish.
Oh, totally, yeah.
And do we know what his protest involved?
Well, the protest involved, apparently he didn't want his child to be in a classroom with Wi-Fi. He wants them to stop Wi-Fi. I don't know I haven't looked at the real details of this and why they're doing it, but I mean, it's bad enough to say that he's doing a little. This is a peaceful. I do know it was a peaceful protest.
Oh, that's what I wanted to find.
It was a peaceful protest, and basically this is what has happened.
That's disgraceful.
Like we've already had the experts on the show telling us the dangers of Wi-Fi and that kind of technology up over 300 megahertz, and yet this is happening in Northern Ireland today. I mean, I'd expect that in the 40s and 50s maybe, but not today.
I don't think they had Wi-Fi in the 40s.
Well, they had the technology in the 40s and 50s, didn't they? So that's just one thing that I'd like to say. If people want to, hashtag that, it's a hashtag free Stephen Clark.
We don't tweet.
No, we don't. We don't tweet. We don't even twat. So the other case that we have here as well, the other thing that was on during the week was, I'm sure everybody has seen it, was a lady called Monica O'Connor. and she was arrested and brought to Mountjoy for 3 hours for not paying a fine because she wanted to homeschool her children. And I just can't believe, again, this day and age, that this is happening. I just can't believe it. What do you think of that, Steve?
I think it's laughable. Well, it's laughable when you see it. I mean, the woman has homeschooled all of her other children. From what we've seen, they're a big family. I can't remember if it's like 5 or 6 children that she already has. And a lot of them, the older children, have done quite well for themselves. They're going to university. They're very, very intelligent. She's done a fantastic job as well. Herself and her husband have done a fantastic job as parents and homeschooling. But I think that the whole farcical thing behind this was they want to homeschool. They've no problem with that. But because seemingly when you register your children at birth, you then get the birth cert, and we know all that process. But then when you want to homeschool, you have to ask the government for permission. You have to, you can do it. You know, we're allowed to do it, but you have to ask them kind of for permission, and obviously they're going to give you the syllabus. I'm not too sure about that end of it. But yeah, seemingly she didn't ask permission, and that's why she was fined. And obviously they said, we're not going to pay this. Now, I don't know how big the fine was, but I don't believe it wasn't massive. But I think she stood by her guns, herself and her husband. They stood by their guns, and I think fair play to them. 3 hours in Mountjoy, she probably done it on her, holding her breath. But I think the principle is it shouldn't have happened. It should never have came to that. I mean, it's 2014. It's not like we're not back in it's not 1914 with some hedge school or something like that. This is supposed to be civilized society.
It's getting ridiculous. What do you think of them two stories there, Finbar?
I think it's a perfect reflection of. Is there a bit of feedback? I was sorted on that.
No, you're fine.
I think it's a perfect reflection of little cracks beneath, as I said, the fluffy hyper reality that's presented to us. And those cracks are only appearing because of social media. Because one thing I have noted in the revelation of all stories that I've heard like this is that they've been spread in social media first. And when they reach a certain pitch, RTE and other larger media stations start covering those stories. But it's only through social media that we're starting to see these cracks. And it brings it right back to the point that the state is based on violence. That woman had violence used against her. They may not have physically had to force her out of the house, but her person was taken, and she, against her will, and she was placed in a prison. And I read an interview with her in which the week before she was taken to Mountjoy, she travelled the same road, and she was going up through the Phoenix Park, I think she said. And her only thoughts in her mind were, the next time I travel this road, I'll be going to prison. And at that stage, that woman did not know how long she was going to be there for. And it was a terrifying and traumatic experience. She was let out in 3 hours. And so what's happened is, she's been slapped on the arse, but she's had a realization herself, I hope, that it's the fear that gets to you and that they try to use against you. When we look at that gentleman that was put on antipsychotic drugs, I presume that some form of antipsychotic drug was used. Yeah. Again, that's the violence that's used. And as I said, the tools that are used have changed. Where once you'd be put up on scaffolds and flogged or maybe cut in a quarter or tortured for hours, it came to, until the crowd started to turn against it. But now we've got fluffier. So you're put in a new cage, and that cage is your own mind with the use of drugs. But there's nothing really changed. If you are willing to challenge the system as it is in the status quo to the end, some form of violence will be used against you. And that's the situation that we're in at the moment.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. And that's the problem, that they hold the cards. Really, they do hold the cards now.
Oh, but they don't. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because she went to Mountjoy.
Yeah.
And she realised after 3 hours, I've done it. Was the fear the reality? And it wasn't. I believe we have I hope that woman feels liberated because I believe she has a lot to contribute to society.
But
and I hope she's able to tell a story of liberation afterwards.
But do you feel that because she's seen it done and has the T-shirt now, she'll come out and say, is that it? Is that all it was? And I was fearing that.
First of all, to herself at the moment, I'm hoping that I'm only hoping, but I'm just guessing how the mind works. Ever since childhood, it's been ingrained into us through every structure in society. Anything that we're told to respect has ingrained fear into us.
Yeah.
And so we if I get a letter sometimes, and I spend my days and my weeks and my months advising people not to give in to fear, but sometimes even when I get a letter, just the first instant for the second or two, there's a little jump of the heart, or there's a little, and that's what they work on. That's how it operates, and it's a thing that we learned in childhood. And we do need to start bit by bit, and I'm hoping that woman's experience gets her out of it. I'm afraid the other man is in a much tougher position, because there must be an order of some sort, a court order made to put him on antipsychotic drugs against his will. And if that's the case, people who are put on antipsychotic drugs, it's not about going up and being sent out for 3 hours. It's about being entrapped in a system where you have to convince a panel of doctors that you are okay to come off these things, and you will have to contempt your court, purge your contempt, but it won't be to a judge. It'll be to a panel of psychiatrists who are heavily embedded within a system that's problematic in itself. Yeah. So that man does need a lot of support, I think.
No, definitely,
at the moment.
Definitely. Okay, we'll just go over to Steve's week. How's your week, Steve?
I'm glad you asked, my learned colleague. Yeah, no, I've had great success this week. As I was telling Alan Jordan the week, I had a moment. As I often say, I go around planting seeds, and not in a naughty way. I just, I drop little nuggets of information into people's laps and kind of sow the seed and just see what happens. There was a time when I started to wake up to a lot of what's going on, where I just wanted to run out and tell everybody, and unfortunately that's what I did. And a lot of people kind of labelled me as a conspiracy theorist, nut job. There was a couple of other terms in there as well, and I've also lost contact with a family member as well because of it, because they couldn't handle the truth. Anyway, yeah, so planted a few seeds. I have been planting them over the past couple of months in relation to the whole water meter / tax in my place of employment, and just drop the seed and leave it there. And every now and again, somebody might talk about meters going in, or they'll mention something, and I'll see that as an option just to throw my 2 cents worth into the conversation. And I just normally throw in, it's all about contract, and when they do send these things out in the post, it's your signature that will really be kind of putting the noose around your neck. And I just kind of said that a couple of weeks ago, and then this week alone, I was in the canteen having lunch, and 2 of the women actually came up to me, and they both wanted to know about return to sender. Well, actually what they said was, give us some of them stickers, will you? And I says, yeah. But with these stickers comes great power. And, no, seriously. And I said, it's not just a case of sticking these stickers on an envelope and throwing it back in the post. I said, that's the simplistic version. However, I said, you are going to need to understand what the whole return to sender process is. So I gave him information which explains each line of the return to sender. I also gave them a link to Harry from We the People, to Harry's video where he explains the whole return to sender process. I said, because there's no point in just doing it and hoping for the best. I said, you need to really empower yourself with the information. Then when you have all the information, then when you put the sticker on the envelope, you will know exactly what it means, and once you pop it in the post box, any fear that you have should subside. I mean, I've done it in relation to other matters, TV license, and the first couple of times when you get letters back, it's as you said, Finbar, you get the little heartbeat. But now it's a case of I know, I have a better understanding of the rules of the game, so therefore I'm not living in fear. And yeah, I was quite surprised when these 2 ladies asked me for the stickers. I gave them the information, as I say, during the week, and we had another chap there as well. He just kind of sat quietly in the corner, whereby I used to be the one sitting quietly in the corner. I was in the minority, and then they said to the other lad, so what have you got your information out yet? And he said, no. And what are you going to do when you get it out? I'll probably just fill it in and pay it, he said. But again, he was now in the minority, and everyone else seemed to be getting that. I'm not going to say joining my side or anything like that, but they just seem to be getting it. The penny seems to have dropped. So that's absolutely the highlight of my week. I couldn't believe it. I was really delighted when they came to me and asked me. So there you go. That's my week. Well, in a nutshell.
Funny you should say that about people waking up, because I have a family member who's beginning to wake up, and he's getting real angry Now, he's gone down the truth will set you free, but it'll annoy you first, and he's actually at that stage where he's learning a bit about sovereignty, and he's ringing me up, and I'm on the phone to him for half an hour, and he said, do you know this? And I said, yeah, okay. And he goes, okay, yeah. I said, this is fascinating stuff, he said. So he's and it's brilliant. It's great seeing him, the whole wake-up process taking place, taking the happening, right? Just my week. Well, there's a few things I want to touch base on.
Yeah, how was your week?
How was my week? Well, actually, I don't know. We can put that over to Finbar. Finbar, have you had anybody, or you come across people that have woken up to what's been going on?
Yeah, I was just listening to what you were saying about the return to sender and all these different methods that are being used. And I think the essence of them all is that people are wakening up for different reasons. Some of them just don't have the money, and a word was used earlier, do see it as comical. My mother's 81, and we sit and have a good laugh about it these days, to be honest with you, when it comes to the idea that we would get a bill for water that we can't afford. And we just have this... I haven't engaged in the return to sender, and I've no critique of it at all, but we just laugh, to be honest with you, and I think that's the way a lot of people are getting. And beyond realizing, again, the complexity of the situation, people just have an intuitive knowledge, even without knowing the detail, that, what's going on is just wrong and things have to change. And that's the essence of the waking up. It gets scary when you start looking at things from Ukraine, Syria, this so-called rise of ISIS and things like that. And when you start looking at the nitty-gritty of what's going on, it actually does get quite scary. But I think at a common level of people on the ground, they are waking up, and I see it all the time. I see it everywhere.
No, well, that's brilliant, because I think, what's happening is the people who would never, ever kind of step out of joint, they're the people who are squeaky clean. Now, and it's beginning to affect these people, and I've noticed it myself, and I know from a psychological point of view, when you start upsetting the people who would normally be on your side, then that's when they start, they'll turn around and say, hang on, this is ridiculous. This is getting really stupid now. And then they just, the government are making criminals out of innocent, ordinary people.
That just crossed my mind just 2 or 3 times over the last few days. I told you the story before we came online. We were talking about the fact that my car was seized for not being taxed maybe a month and a half ago. Yeah. And I was telling the lads about a lady who's 68 years old who lives near me. And she's had to go back to work because she just can't survive. And she couldn't afford to tax the car. She's cleaning toilets in a pub every morning. And she a very lovely woman, and you just wouldn't want anybody at that age to be doing anything like that.
No.
But she was going off in her car one morning, just a 5-kilometre journey, and the Gardaí were waiting for her, and actually took the car off her. And left her on the side of the road in a terrible predicament, But they criminalised that woman. And that woman, up until 2 weeks ago, wouldn't engage in anti-state dialogue in public. But I'm telling you, she's fecking and she's blinding now.
Yeah,
and that's what they're doing. They're criminalising our population.
Yeah, everybody. I mean, you can't seem to... I think I said it for a bit of fun on the show. We're going back to not the 9 o'clock news where, you get fined, or there's a fine on the post for walking in the cracks in the pavement, or wearing a loud shirt at night, or looking at the policeman in a funny way. I mean, it's getting like that.
But it's also getting beyond money.
It's all
us in other ways now, through our behaviour, through our objection.
Yeah.
For instance, going back to that man that's on antipsychotic drugs, the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Manual for Diagnosing Psychiatric Conditions, went through another change at the end of 2013, and it introduced a number of new conditions. And one of those conditions, I just can't recall the name of it now, but it was basically anybody who objects to things all the time, anybody who resists authority all the time, verbally or in terms of their ideology, it now has a psychiatric condition.
Yeah, it's called ODD.
Yeah, now to be able to before you can jail somebody or incarcerate somebody, whether it's in their own mind or within a building, the state has to first of all either create a crime or create a condition. And they've created a condition, or the powers that be have. But not only that, something else that they did was this. Up until 2013 and that change, in terms of the diagnosis of mild depression, up until then you had to have 4 of 6 symptoms, and you had to have them for, I think it was 3 months, consistent. But if you had just experienced a loss, someone close to you passed away, you could not be diagnosed. Now you have to have 2 symptoms for 1 month, and the rule about experiencing grief, that rule has been got rid of. And suddenly they've widened the net massively for the amount of people who could essentially, with a panel of doctors, be incarcerated for that condition.
Yeah, it's called...
it's getting very scary. So it's not just about money and us going, oh, Jesus, the people are sick of paying the taxes, we want bread. There's something even more sinister happening. And that's something that sometimes I'm afraid to share with my 80-year-old mother, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but best not probably say it to her. Yeah, it's called, we've talked about it on the show before, it's called Oppositional Defiant Disorder, ODD.
That's it.
And Lauren Holly from the Fugees was actually locked up for a period of time because she was diagnosed, inverted commas, with ODD because she didn't agree with what was going down. And, you know, we can all kind of roll it into Agenda 21 and everything that's going on, common purpose, and put that all into the same bag. It's the same thing, and it's obviously the eugenics program, the vaccines and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's the whole bag of tools they're trying to use. Now, I'm just talking about things that, you know, happened that I picked up on during the week, and I don't know, you know, there are people out there who are saying actually they are throwing the powers to be, or powers to, you know, that war, if you want to call them that, are throwing everything in the can they have at everybody, at globally, because they're losing their power. And I mean, for people some people are into Benjamin Flumford, some people aren't. I kind of, again, I see it as information, and whether I believe it or not, that's another thing. But he did say it's kind of like it's a dying lion, and he said they're not going to go up and start poking it. They're just going to leave it. The powers to be are dying, and they're losing out, and that's it. Now, I don't know. I mean, we've been told that by a number of people that have come onto the show. Is that happening? I know what I can see is there's an awful lot of whistleblowers and information coming out. I mean, I even posted up on Facebook today 5 different things related to the Gardaí that were criminal. All things happening around Ireland that were going on. And funny enough, I know you have something to tell us about, which I want you to talk about, what we talked about before we went live. But I just want to mention this. Now, my heart is saying this is not going to happen, and it's not true. But for a bit of fun, I thought we talk about it. And I put up the video up on Facebook. And, you know, there are a few people out there that are convinced. And if it does happen, happy days. But, you know, I mean, we've had dates come and go and people saying things, and they've come and gone. And like the OPPT, that was all a big thing when that came out, and it was supposed to be brilliant. And then that died to death. And then, so this other thing called NESARA. And the NESARA is to be officially announced to the world on the 9th of the 9th. Okay, so this week, basically, on Tuesday, basically. And
what is the NESARA?
Well, I'll explain it to you now. David Hugo Boyle, who was on the show, mentioned this as well, and there's a lot of talk about it on the internet. Basically, they know about the debt-based system, that there's no way. I mean, we owe so much debt at the moment globally. To who, I don't know, but we owe all this debt. It's never going to get paid. So basically what they're going to do is there's going to be a financial reset, okay? And the powers to be, you know, the people who are on the good side, who want this change to take place, have all this kind of reserve currency backed by gold, ready to go on their computer systems, the global computer systems, and this is going to be filtering down from the central banks into the normal banking system. And obviously, the banks will get, apparently the normal banks will get paid off. I mean, this is what they're saying. This is why I kind of don't believe it. They're saying that there's debt forgiveness, i.e. mortgages, credit cards, loans, and all that. And the banks will get paid a sum of money to cover all them debts. They'll get a percentage of it because them debts, it's fiat currency. They didn't exist anyway. You know, it's all kind of made up. So the banks will be paid a certain amount just to keep them happy. And then the system will potentially shut down for a few days, 2 or 3 days. And then the system will come back up. And this is what's going to happen. Now, take it with a pinch of salt, because this could be a plan by the powers to be to actually, you know, bring in a one world currency, you know, because they want a one world system. And this could be just their way of doing it. And I went over to the NESARA website. This lady who calls herself Dove of Oneness, And she sounds very convincing when she's talking about it. And she's stating all the facts and all that. But when you go over to our website, most of the links don't work, and it's very, very basic website. Very, very basic. So I'm not convinced by it. But hey, look, I have an open mind. If on Tuesday I wake up, or on Tuesday evening when America comes on, and then the banks shut down, and then, you know, there is a reset, and we have more money in our bank account, well then, hey, happy days. But that's what they're saying. I don't know. What do you think, Steve?
Sorry, I was elsewhere at that moment in time. Sorry, I was just looking into a link there about Stonehenge. I agree with everything you say.
Okay, that's cool.
That's good enough for you.
Well, Finbar, what do you think?
Again, as you said at the very beginning there, you hear so many dates being put out for significant events that don't occur. On an initial analysis of what you've said, I think a shutdown of the system for a few days, although being carried out by the benevolent status quo, would be an admission of major problems. And I don't think they're in a position to. But on the other hand, we have this promise of quantitative easing through the ECB, which in my mind, 40 billion is the figure put out thus far, in my mind is just going to go through the banks. It's not going to get down to the bottom. It'll be used to fill up holes that are in the system at the moment during ECB stress tests. There's been a lot of hype at an Irish government level and broader in relation to improving economies, etc., that we know now is not happening in Germany, and we know it's not happening in Ireland. And we know that's been done because of these stress tests. Everything at a European level is about the stress tests. So I think they must be bad enough for the hype that's been on for the last year. And for the desperation in dragging people through the court so quickly to have at the moment, I think it's up to 60,000 legal cases in train at the moment, just shows something desperate on their side in terms of what they're afraid of, that they're trying to get so much on their books before these stress tests. So there is something seismic there.
Yeah.
But as usual, they seem to get these plasters and these bandages that they can get over to the next bridge and then the next bridge, kicking the can down the road. I don't know if these stress tests are going to result in anything seismic, and I'm certainly not going to cross my fingers to put any money on something happening on Tuesday.
No, definitely not. I'm not going to either. But the stress test thing, basically all the banks in Europe are going through the stress test. And they, as you say, they are frightened over something because their reserves are not matching out their loan book. And that's the problem, and that's what the stress test is. Do they have enough money there? Because the last thing a bank wants is a run on the bank. So maybe this is part and parcel of what something might happen. Maybe there is going to be a reset. Now, add that stress test onto the fact that the BRICS countries are now dealing outside the petrodollar, which is, there's a lot of countries moving away from that, and they're setting up their own IMF. And they're going to be China, and Russia is going to be the main funding for that. So that, along with the stress test, something's got to give. Now, we had this kind of this numerology from Christine Lagarde, who's apparently being sued now over, alleged criminal activity. I'm not too sure what she did, but apparently there's a lot of money involved. And so she came out with her, her numerology, that when she was talking, she did a talk in front of the press, an announcement in front of the press, and she started going on about 7 of this and 7 of that and 7 of this and 7 of this. And I don't know whether it was code for the powers to be or somebody, but that was kind of very freaky. But so I don't know, maybe this month. I mean, even I was watching the video by Thomas Sheridan, and Thomas was saying himself that he reckons it's September, October. He feels, he's looking at the markets and he feels something's going to go on. Something's going to happen. Now, again, it's finger in the air. We don't know. But, I think people just need to keep an eye on things and watch what's going on and read between the lines, I think.
I think if you take a blueprint, a see-through blueprint of what's happening now and put it over the period before, and this isn't scaremongering, but if you put it over the period, particularly the period before World War II, what you see are such similarities, it's actually startling, and some of it is very PR created. For instance, Hitler, one of Hitler's reasons he claimed for going into Czechoslovakia, northern France, Poland, etc., was the fact that after World War I, Germany had been annexed all around its borders, and like most of Prussia was in Poland, for instance. And the German citizens in there were second-class citizens. And so Hitler felt he was being left with no other, the diplomacy was exhausted and that he needed to go into these countries, etc. And there was a wider playing around of markets. America had not come out of, as it was claiming, the Great Depression, and there was an overall militarization around the world, which is happening now. And then we look at Russia. And Russia's in a very similar position. It came out of the post-Soviet era in a state of collapse. Oligarchs bought up all the shares for nothing that had been given to the people. Vladimir Putin came, like Hitler in many ways. Putin's angle was the oligarchs. Hitler was the fact that there was a very small proportion of Jewish people seemed to control a lot of the, and I'm in no way anti-Semitic here, seemed to control, all these similarities are frightening. And these similarities are not coming through an honest media. They're actually being presented through a dishonest media. And when I look at that, when I look at what's happening in China, when I look at what's happening in Syria, there's something, it's beyond an economic collapse. I think there's something else going to happen to bypass an economic collapse.
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
I think there's something big coming down the pipe, definitely, with there's so much going on at the moment. Every country is going through the same problems. And there's an energy or an uprising of people waking up to what's going on. So I do think there's something coming down the line, and I think they're throwing all their cards at everything to try and stop this, people waking up. But people are going to do it naturally. They're just going to see what's going on. And when there's a false flag, people within a few minutes, people are going false flag. They're spotting it now straight away without even, spending like 9/11. It took it took a while for people to kind of cotton on to that. But now when they see a false flag, bang, straight away in a few minutes.
But that's why a war also is so important to them, because there's an existential thing happening around the world that is beyond, again, complexity. It's the people having a sense that they're just sick of this, that they're sick of it all and they want something simpler. And that's a very dangerous thing. And what usually would take a growth... Remember, anarchism, for instance, and anarcho-syndicalism in the 1930s was the bee's knees in terms of a progressive way forward. And quite often now when I look at the Green Movement and the Green Movement merging with a new individualism and socialism at the same time, it would take a full time to discuss that in itself. But when I see this happening, it reminds me of the anarchist movements of the 1930s, which really you have to remember that Congress in the United States was surrounded by veteran soldiers that were impoverished, living in tents,
Yeah.
There was a state of absolute emergency right around the world because people were realizing the state is just not what our fathers thought it was going to be.
Well,
and it's happening again.
Yeah, well, I've always said, our government are like a parasite, and they're living off us, and we need to remove that parasite. It's that simple. They rely on us. We don't rely on them.
There needs to be no they, us and them. There needs to be none of that. It needs to go back to a point where we feel we are them, if you know what I mean, that there is no divide, that we each feel that we have in our capacity the ability to contribute and to be heard. Every mother should think that their son could be a doctor if they wanted, and that actually to happen. We need to go back to this idea that we are it. We are it, and that there's no other.
Yeah, I know.
And if anyone pretends to be another, well, I'm sorry, but we need to be pretty strong with them.
Yeah, well, this is why we need change, But let's move on. The next thing, a bit of an echo there. Right, the other thing is I was going to mention. Oh, a bit strange echo there. I wonder if that Skype acting up again. Do you want to disconnect and reconnect with Finbar? Okay, Finbar, we're just going to disconnect and reconnect because we're getting a bit of an echo there. So I'll be with you in a minute. Okay,
I think it's Skype acting the maggot again.
Okay, I think it's Skype acting up again. We'll just try that again.
Hello, lads.
Okay, brilliant. That's that echo. Just Skype tends to do that now and again. That's why we tend to go for Uvo as another product. But the other thing I was going to say on the list here, myself and a friend, I'm sure people have heard about the Hub down in Dublin, who are also doing a great job helping people, stay in their houses. And myself and a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, who has been through the courts and had issues in courts and our house and mortgage and all that kind of stuff. And we decided that we wanted to set up a satellite office of the Hub in Kells. And again, it would be kind of free, and we wanted to get a room for a few hours a week where people could come in, and if we could help them, great. If we couldn't, we'd pass them on to the hub down in Dublin, or ask Dublin to help us, and then we'd, between the two groups, just like a satellite office of the hub. So we approached the local resource centre, and, bearing in mind the word is resource centre, and we asked the lady there, and apparently went to the board of management, and they came back to us and said that no, you can't do that at this time. Now, they did say that they have their own counselling service and they have MABs in there. But what we would be doing in the hub, as you know, Finbar, would be not sitting down and go, there, I hope you're okay, here's a cup of tea and a biscuit. We'd be actually giving them the tools to actually deal with the banks. And MABs being a government agency, well, they won't do that because they're tied to the government. They've got their hands tied.
Yeah.
So they turned us down. So if anybody knows of an office or spare room in Kells, County Meath, where we could have an office for a few hours, it's a free service. The hub is a free service, free time. And again, it's just helping people with the mortgages and stuff like that. So if anybody knows of any spare space there or somewhere that we can, hold up for a couple of hours a week, that would be fantastic. But it's.
Can I make a suggestion on that? Because I'll tell you what we did in County Louth, because we were faced with the same issue. And the hub, the land league, whatever, go and get advice, independent advice that's not making cash off your hand over fist, and just get in there defending yourselves, irrespective of the movement. But in County Louth, we were faced with the same issue. And you know something? We went to business people and told them what we were doing. We were giving advice. And do you know who's as strung up as anybody else? The business people. And they were quite happy to give us a back room or an office or different places like that. And we have a place in Drogheda, Ardee and Dundalk now. And it's, there's no point in my mind, and we've gone through this, of almost feeling like you're cap in hand to these parish-run community places, there's no point in that, because you'll always be then watching yourself. But you'll find some business people out there with fire who are in debt themselves and have problems themselves, and just go and find them, because they're out there, man.
Yeah, no, we will. We'll look around. I mean, it's a good idea there, Finbar. I think we should look at that. The other thing that's a couple of more things on the list, but again, it's good to throw it out there. Regarding the water and the whole charge of the water, and I'll get Steve's take on it as well as yourself, Finbar. The other day, I just happened to be, doing a few bits around the house, and this sweeping truck pulls up outside the house. Now, we have a standing pipe shore where my house is, just outside my house, and so he proceeded to open the shore, put a standing pipe in, fill up his truck full of water, right? And I went out and said to him, as I do, when I see something like that, I said, are you okay there, pal?
I believe you do that for the postman as well.
And, anybody comes near my house, I have to ask questions, And he said, oh, yeah, I'm just filling up. And I said, oh, you're going to be sweeping the roads? And he said, well, I will be sweeping the roads, I just won't be doing your one. So, because we're in a private estate, obviously, it's not been handed off to the council just yet, and still loads of work to be done to it. And I went, oh, okay, fair enough. So I just walked away, and then I started thinking to myself, I said, now, if we were actually paying for the water, who would actually pay for that water that he's just gone in and taken? How would that work? Because the shore is in between two houses and two pipes. So that water, the water's flowing into the neighbour's house, and then the water flows down to my house, and then obviously on to the next house. So he's taking water, so how does that work out? And who would pay for that if he taps into that water?
I don't think anyone pays for that.
No, why don't...
That would be the same thing that, when a couple of years ago when the pipes froze in our estate, they had a standpipe as well. Yeah. And that's where we had to get water. We had to go down with buckets. But it's like if the fire brigade come along, if the fire brigade need water, if they run out of water, that's exactly where they get it from as well, isn't it?
Mm.
So I think that's, I don't know. I mean, you won't be paying for it. But look, at the end of the day, I think he's a council worker anyway. So
well, I don't know whether it was council. It could have been a private road sweeper. It looked like a private road sweeping company.
I suppose, well, as Danny just wrote up there, I was just about to say that, we're obviously paying for it through our taxes. The same way we're paying for the water, by the way.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Finbar?
Oh, I don't. It sounds like a very interesting discussion at county council meeting.
It does, yeah.
And I'm being a bit sarcastic about it. I don't know the complexities of it all. I never had to deal with pipes and stuff like that myself. Yeah. I'm just not paying, and that's it. And if they try to turn it off, I'll just switch it back on. I don't think I think there's so many different scenarios that they're having to face that they don't have a lot of the questions or answers to those questions themselves. You know. Yeah. But I think if the essence that people hold in their hearts is, listen, we're just not buying it, we're not paying, that's it.
Well, that's I totally agree with you. And it is amazing seeing so many people. I mean, one of the things that I have here on the list, and if people want to see this video, go over to the Open Your Mind Facebook page. Dundalk have done a great skit of the water charge and the return to sender. Have you seen it?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, fair play to them for doing it. It's very funny.
No, it is. And Elvis is not dead. He's living in Dundalk.
Elvis is alive, and he's living in Dundalk, and he's returning the sender with the actual, the water, the paperwork. And I thought, fair play to him for doing it.
I think it's good to put humour into it as well. I think Marcus Howard made that video now, and it's good to use a bit of humour. And that's, again, going back to, instead of making them all powerful, you know, we can also have a laugh about this while we're on the road to rejection of water charges. Let's enjoy it.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I put up on Facebook, and I don't know whether the listeners, what they think of this, you know this Ice Bucket Challenge that's going around and everybody's doing it, and I've been nominated and I'm not doing it for a lot of reasons. But I said to somebody on Facebook, I said, why don't we do the Irish Water Challenge? So exactly the same thing, right? So there's somebody standing behind you with a bucket, but when they pour the bucket over you, the paperwork from Irish Water falls out of the bucket, right? And then you put the return to sender sticker on the paperwork, and then you nominate 3 people to do the same thing. What do you think?
I think you need to patent that idea.
Yeah, well, he said it to me during the week, Finbar, and I just said that's brilliant. I mean, yeah. It's kind of jumping on the bandwagon of the whole Ice Bucket challenge, but it's, as you're saying, and we've said it 100 times before, humour. You do something with a bit of humour, and people will learn quicker than you could stand there and give a big stern lecture of all the points A, B, C, D. But if you do it with humour, people like the likes of Bill Hicks now, Bill Hicks and George Carlin, they made hell of a lot of sense, but they've done it with humour. So you walked away after having a good laugh at their material, but you learned something as well.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree.
Well, that's the idea. So that's my idea, to do the Irish Water Challenge.
I think maybe burning some of the documents as well at Halloween, and maybe putting a photograph of them on fire on social media, whatever you can, to show that in a simple fashion people are standing up. They don't give a shit.
Well, I think, considering that the person who owns the Irish Water is called Dennis O'Brien, I think we'll have the nickname him Dobby for short. Put a bit of humour into it. So Dobby from Irish Water, and
the newsman on RTE will get a bit upset.
Will he? I don't know.
God love him.
Oh, okay. So there'll be Dobby Mark too. But that's the Irish Water Challenge, I think. And the last thing on the list before we get into a few other things is I couldn't believe during the week, and I'm sure you guys probably heard it. GQ magazine gave former Prime Minister Tony Blair a Philanthropist of the Year award. Tony Blair.
Well, philanthropist is a dirty word these days when we look at Atlantic Philanthropies and the way they operate, and that if any organisation receiving funds from Atlantic Philanthropy, which is nearly every organisation in the country, is not allowed to take a political stance. And I believe Age Action Ireland lost up to €100,000 a few years ago when they had that protest in St Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin. You may recall Hogan was up on the altar and a load of older people in a very slow fashion assaulted them. But apparently they lost €100,000 from Atlantic Philanthropies for doing that.
Wow.
I think philanthropy these days is a dirty word.
Yeah.
So
well,
I think he should have got it, yeah.
Well, look, to be honest with you, he's a war criminal. That's what he should have got a reward for, killing so many people. That's what, and we obviously put it out there. People who do buy GQ, don't buy it. If they're going to be rewarding this guy, giving awards like that, he doesn't deserve it. But the one thing I want to go back on, that's all the questions done, and that's my week. Ding! I feel like there should be music at the end of it. Tell us about, you said earlier that your car was taken off you for obviously the tax, and you said something sinister before we went live. Do you want to tell us what you found out?
Oh, yeah. Now, I don't want to say everything that I heard. I'll just be careful.
Okay.
But I will say everything that I said to you.
You can say apparently and you believe, because that is your belief.
Okay. No, I'll even be a little bit more subtle than that. Okay, so my car was seized at the side of the road. I was going to pay the toll, an unusual thing for me to do, and I needed to get changed. So I pulled into the garage at Lusk on a Thursday evening on the way back from court. I had a good day with some people. I was in a good mood, lovely sunny day, etc. No reason to be in a bad mood about anything. And then I saw a band Garda stopping cars, and she stopped my car. I had no tax. I only had the car for a couple of months, a month and a half really. I had no tax in the car, and the car was taken off me, and I was left at the side of the road with another girl whose car was also taken off her. Within a few minutes, a truck arrived to take the car down to, I think it was Gannon's, was it? I think the name was Gannon. This garage that does this kind of business, and I believe he has a number of these garages across the city. Now, it turns out that Mr. Gannon is a retired detective, and that this business was up and running in his wife's name while he was the detective, which I believe is questionable in itself. I was also told that there is some form of a funding relationship between Gannon's and the particular local Garda stations in relation to the seizure of vehicles and what might be described as, but may not be called, some form of a Garda benevolent fund. So that needs to be looked into more, and I would ask listeners to look into it more. Now, as I say, this is just coming from a couple of people who have had vehicles seized and who looked into things themselves. There's no full clarification of this, so we would ask people if they could clarify some of those things. But Gannon's themselves tried to charge me an extra €35 on top of 120. Now, I did sign my name in a document, but I made clear beforehand I was doing so under duress, and I also put that in brackets in between as well, and signing my signature. So, but they were trying to charge me extra, and they certainly didn't get the extra. So instead of getting 165 they got 125, I think it was. So again, I got away with that because it just said I wasn't paying this extra money. And so most people would pay that extra money, and it seemed to be quite extortionate in itself that they were doing this extra, And there's a lot of signs around the counter when you go into this place, this garage, about laws in terms of shouting at counter staff, and so they want you to be angry, or they're expecting you to be angry, in terms of when you're going in there and you're being charged this extra money. But that was my overall experience. I was just talking to the lads beforehand about this as a by story, as it were, a side story, and there does seem to be an element of profiteering going on, it's particularly with these garages. People that have been left at the side of the road, this is clearly a matter in which, if they know the car exists, if they want to pursue tax, I'm not saying taxation at the moment anyway is right or wrong, but if they want to pursue tax, that they do it in an administrative capacity. They don't stop people on a lovely blue sky, sunny day, when they're in a good mood, having a good day, being a person, just a human being in the world enjoying themselves, they don't have a right to stop you and leave you at the side of the road 60 kilometres away from your home. But that's what they're doing at the moment.
But even that lady that you said, she was 68.
68 years old, going to scrub toilets because of the economic situation.
But wasn't there a lady is it the same lady that got a car taken off her and they left her on the side of the road? That was
another girl that was with me. She wasn't with me, she was stopping the car behind me. And maybe it was my fault, because I said to the guard that I was going to watch every single car she stopped. And if she didn't do every single person and apply the law as she was applying it to me, that I was going to report it. And so, I know maybe but the girl behind me, the car was taken. And then when the guard went to the next car, I was standing beside the guard. I was looking at what the guard was looking at. And so then they packed up and they left.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, for the guards to actually go and have somebody that old well, it's not that old, but, it's old enough to leave them on the side of the road with a car.
This woman actually stopped her car and turned it when she saw the guards in good time and went away and was followed by them. And she was chased, literally. Even though she didn't increase her speed, she ended up stopping. But this was the fear and the terror that was in the woman. And I'm sure at 68, everybody could be considered to need to be careful of their heart and things like that. And You know, they put the living daylights up her. She had never, ever. This is a woman who goes to mass every morning at 6 o'clock.
See, but this is what I'm saying. They're making criminals out of people who would never do such a thing. They'd never be a criminal. I mean, to turn around and say to somebody, I mean, I did post it up. I got annoyed over that. I went to, I was going to drop my son off to school. And they were there the first day, the 1st of September. They were in the high street, 2 guards either side of the road, stopping all the cars, checking for tax. And I put it up on Facebook, on my own personal Facebook, and I said, you know, people are going to sleep better knowing that them criminal tax dodgers are now going to be taken care of. You know, it infuriates me and it annoys me and disgusts me that these guards are there to do a job. They're supposed to be peacekeepers. They know who the criminals are, but yet they can't arrest them. Or they can't be bothered arresting them because, you know what, it's not worth my job. I'll just stick with catching people who have tax out of date because it's easier. And plus the revenue. I mean, I had a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, a female friend of mine, who was sexually attacked in Navan this year. And she went to the police and reported it to the police. And the guy is still walking around. She's done the statement, and she went down kept going down to the station saying, "What are you doing? Did you bring him in to talk to him?" No, we haven't done anything yet. And the guy is still walking around. God knows if he's done it to somebody else. And there was a heading in the news there recently, the mainstream news, that they're not going to be looking at sexual attacks or anything like that until something like November 2015. And so,
is it collecting money, collecting revenue?
Yeah, it's not, see, crime doesn't make the money. You know, actual crime does not make the money. Things like stopping people in cars with no insurance, no tax and all that.
Crime costs money.
Yeah, of course.
It costs
yeah.
them. Well, again, this is the them as if it's their bloody money.
Yeah.
You know?
But
it brings it back to where all these movements, these new, not necessarily political parties, but these movements are coming from. That we need, it's not that we don't agree to ever contribute to anything in society, but we need to be given a choice. And we need to know that it's going to the right place. And that's why, so that lady, for instance, that was stopped, her utterances since this is, she never said it before, but now she's letting stuff out. And she's talking about the fact that nobody knows where this money's going to, and that it's not really for the roads. What is it for?
Yeah, well,
so they're asking the questions.
Going to the bondholders, and that's it. We want to wake these people up. And, you know, we had Bob Chapman. That's the name I was trying to remember the last time we were on the show. Oh, right. Bob Chapman was on our show, and he spoke 6 languages, and he worked in counterintelligence, and he's passed away now. But Bob said to us, I said, Bob, when are people going to change? When are they going to wake up? And he said, when they can't put food in the children's mouth. He said, by then it will probably be too late. Because you do have your I'm okay Jacks who can afford to pay the, it's another bill, and there's the typical, sure, what can you do excuse. And it upsets me and annoys me because, do they not have any sense of principles at all?
I think it's very important to remember that I believe that if not the majority, the critical mass have almost, in the amount we need, have woken up. But here's the thing. We have a government. We've never had a government with such thick skin. And by God, I have to commend them on their nerve to still be holding on. But the amount of pressure that's out there is seismic. And we're not failing in what we're doing. And I really don't think we are. And I don't want that idea to get out there. I believe that the amount of people that have or are in the process of waking up, and something is going to happen. It may not come in a big bang. It could be continuous policy shifts. So in terms of elections, for instance, I think what's going to happen is everybody's going to start to change their promises and their policies towards a more populist or point of view. I don't think they'll ever change their policy to the degree that people expect. But overall, what I'm saying is that I'm quite positive, to be honest with you. I think the I'm all right Jacks are soon going to be in a minority, if not already are. When you look at those figures, hundreds of thousands of people, was it 750,000 people live in poverty? Was that the figures I last
probably
week?
Would be about right. That would be a good guess, yeah.
That's when I look at 126,000 mortgages. Now, that affects, some people try to create a divide between, the homeowner and the person that had a second investment home. Irrespective, a family is affected by it. So 126,000, multiply that by, we'll say 3. That's the amount of people directly affected by the mortgage thing. And you can be darn sure that they can't pay the water charge. That's a very significant amount of people in itself. And then there's other people affected by other things that may just be able to pay their mortgage and just or can't pay anything else. So there's a very large amount of people in this country. Unfortunately, the alternative is not necessarily being put to them, or the penny isn't fully dropping with them, that they are actually the alternative. The alternative isn't Sinn Féin. The alternative isn't a Marxist party that only looks at the structures of government and not at the relationships in government. But that's coming. The penny's dropping around the country. People who've been activists for 5, 6, 7 years now are starting to, the people who are hanging on and have the perseverance and are still in there, irrespective of the difference, they're starting to realise we need to come together to work these solutions out. And the Land League is a part of that, and the spread of the Hub and other groups are a part of that too, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think taking on the banks, and you know, I mean, I'm not going to tar all the guards with the same brush, because I know there are good guards out there. And I did see a report the other day saying that 12 guards were actually reporting 12 whistleblowers were actually talking about the corruption in the police. So there are guards standing up and actually exposing what's going on. But I did post up on Facebook there, I think I said earlier, 5 different cases of fraud and crimes that the police, the guards are involved in. And which sickens you, because, you know, for me it's hypocrisy. You know, they'll turn around and tell you shouldn't be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that. And yet this is going on. It's mob rule. You know, and we need to change it. But the one thing, Finbar, that it's great that, you know, if the parties start turning around and saying, look, we're going to have to start changing things. But the trouble is that they're on a gravy train. I mean, I have looked at the people that cover County Meath, the politicians that cover County Meath, and there's a couple of questions I'd like to ask all of them, and I feel that they're on a gravy train. Basically, you get in and you do your 4 or 5 years, and it doesn't matter what crap that people send over to you, just ignore it. And they do a crap job, and then you get the pension, and that's it. They're set up for life. So then you don't have to worry about it. And so that gravy train has to stop, because that's when the system will start changing. But also, we need to have a system of direct democracy. Whatever you want to put the name on it. I asked Vin actually the other day. Vin sent me over the 1919 Constitution, the Irish Constitution, and on page 13 it says direct democracy. Our forefathers put it in there, and I'm sure they put it in for a reason, because they knew that politicians could be corrupted. So the power of the powers has to go back to the people, and then there won't be a them and us, because it'll be just all of us.
I fully agree, and I did say as an addendum that they will never go as far as the people will want them to go. I think that there is a dropping of the penny everywhere, that the power does lie with us. But this isn't the first time. It happened in 1919. It happened in Russia. But quite often what happens is the people end up supporting what are described as socialist parties. But the socialist parties, just like the capitalist parties, equally believe in the state staying as it is and maintaining the powers that it has and the relationship that it has. And I think during the next elections, for instance, there will be a groundswell of opinion towards what may be termed socialist or left parties, but who still believe in this relationship that exists between the state and the people. But I think over time, the general demand over the next 10 to 15 years will be far greater direct democracy, which isn't just about voting on everything, but it's also about how we educate. That, and again, the story of the lady that was sent to Mountjoy for homeschooling, for instance, that's the start of something where people are starting to see the education system as having to be more than just about getting a good job, that it has to also address the real systematic problems that we have. And I think that lady is a sign of the cracks starting to come and become very public, because it was on RTE News.
Yeah, I think that's it, and that's the main thing. I think the mainstream media have to start waking up, because if they don't start reporting things like that, then they're going to get it in the neck as well from the people. So they need to wise up.
But the end game is something that's beyond electoral, as you say, every 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
The end game is a situation where every neighbourhood just has a communal sense of coming together to discuss things and talk about things and to agree on things, building into every wider parish kind of community, into every wider and so forth. Where, as I said about every mother believing their son could be a doctor or their daughter could be a doctor, equally, that everybody has an expectation that within the next 6 months, I'll be sitting on some kind of a committee, I'll get time off work to do it, I'll still get paid to do it. And there's, when I look at anarchism and the history of anarcho-syndicalism, they were big into the education system, discussing it, because they believed that everybody should be educated to be everything at the beginning.
Well, I
so
do.
that they have a basic handle on things, that they could go and sit on a finance committee at a local level, or this. You know what I mean? That real participation.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, education and knowledge is, part and parcel of you be able to make a choice. Ignorance, you can't. Now, we had David Hugo Boyle on, and he talked about a system. Now, it seemed quite complicated to me, but basically the crux of it was that everybody got involved being part of a committee or community or whatever, and everybody had a go at doing it. So
that is the essence of anarcho-syndicalism at a very grassroots level.
Yeah, well, that's well. If you listen to the show we did with David Hugo Boyle, he goes into it in detail. But everybody gets a shot of being at, the chairman of the committee and then the secretary or whatever. So nobody's left out. Everybody gets a shot at doing it.
But they also understand then the challenges to each role. So they're not. So sometimes we can be very harsh to people that are on our side at times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they'll also understand that things are not as easy sometimes to do, and that we need to have a bit of patience and so forth.
Yeah, well, I think that'll be pretty good. Now I'm going to go over to Steve. Steve has a few questions come in there.
Excuse me. Yeah, there's a question come in there earlier on from Andy Pandy. I think he was addressing everyone in the chat room, but I copped it and I said, what, I'll throw it out as well. It's kind of backtracking a little bit, Alan. But Finbar, you may know a little about it. I know Alan definitely will. But Andy's wondering, what thoughts have we got in relation to Neil Keenan and Drake? The reason Andy asks is that they are talking about this reset, and Drake is going back to doing Sunday shows again as well as Thursday shows.
Well, my opinion, I've seen a couple of videos from Neil Keenan and talking about working with the Dragon family and what they're doing. Again, I just see it as information. I'm not seeing anything physical changing. I am seeing a lot of people on the ground waking up, and I think we have to use social media and use social media to the best effect we can. While we can, and get the information out there and educate. I think that's the important thing. And as you said, Finbar, when people start tweeting this or Facebooking this or whatever, Instagram or whatever media or platform you decide to use, as long as it gets out there and people hear about it, then if the mainstream media cotton onto it and then they start reporting on it, then that's going to put into the psyche. I don't know what you're taking that.
Well, they're left with no choice, I think, the mainstream media, because the penny will drop even with the most consciously challenged people. The penny will drop. Why is the mainstream media that I'm watching, why is all my friends sharing something and it's not on the news? And there's an obvious distinction there that anybody would notice, and I think they're forced to put certain stories up that they wouldn't have decided to put up otherwise. And I don't think they necessarily have a choice in it, In terms of the Drake thing, I think you'll be glad to know I have no idea what you're on about. I have no opinion on that.
Okay, well, basically, Drake and Neil Keenan are chaps who are on the white hats, if you want to call them, the good guys who are involved in making the changes globally by dealing with certain families over in the Far East regarding gold and the reset of the currency and stuff like that. We've had Drake on the show a couple of times, and we haven't had Neil on. We'll have to get Neil on if we can get him on, and he can give us an update. Good point there with the listener. I think we'll have to contact Drake or contact Neil and ask Neil to come on, if you will. He's a kind of American-Irish chap, and to get an update from Neil. But again, I just... when I start see things happening in a positive light, then that's when I'll kind of start believing it. For now, I'm just kind of dealing with people on a day-to-day basis and just seeing if they're waking up. And I have come across people, and I'm sure we all have, that you will look at them and go, you know what, they will never wake up. They will never. Now, I could be wrong, but there's some people who they will. If a law came out to say that we're going to tax you for every breath that you take, they'll be there first in the queue at the post office or whatever, and they'll be paying that tax. There's just some people who will never get it. But then again, that's okay. We don't need everybody to be woken up. We just need, hopefully, a majority to be woken up.
Or a critical mass, at least.
Oh, definitely, yeah. We have to have the critical mass.
It doesn't necessarily even have to be a majority. It's about the proportion of people who are proactive. You know, you can have a majority of people who are docile, and I think that's what we have now. And I think if myself and 10 people dressed up as clowns and got on military tanks and took over the Dáil Éireann, those docile people still wouldn't raise an eyebrow.
Yeah.
And so I think it's about the critical mass of proactivity, which could be 20%.
Yeah.
Which could be 15%.
Yeah. Yeah, it depends. Well, I think people are beginning to wake up out of desperation, a lot of people, and maybe that's the change. I always call it the difference between harmony and disharmony. If you're in harmony with your life, then you won't change anything because you're in harmony. It's when you're deharmonized, that's when you start thinking and asking questions. And then when you have trouble paying bills and mortgages and stuff like that, that's when the thinking starts coming in. So people need to be deharmonized a lot of the time to wake up to what's going on.
But it's very important. The proactivity thing is so important in that psychological sequence, because quite often the people, from my experience and other people's experiences, the people who are in severe debt, quite often they haven't told their partner, their wife, in 3 or 4 years that the mortgage hasn't been paid. And these are facts. And so it takes them meeting or coming in contact with the proactive person to be able to come out and release what's in there before they start learning. And so that's why it's so important not to see the relationship that you, the listener, has with a movement of activists as something that's separate between you and them, just like we do with the government. I think it's important that when you hear the message, you need to see yourself as the proactive person. What can I do? Who can I contact? And so forth, and get involved. And those people that are hiding at the moment, that are quite often what we perceive to be all right jacks, but they're not all right, they actually come in contact with the proactive activist. Should be in nearly every one of us. And that's how I think change happens. And it happens really on the ground with human contact. It doesn't happen all the time with national meetings. It doesn't always happen with PR statements. It's really about what people like me and you do on the ground that make things happen.
And I think if you take an estate, say 60 houses, with 60 families there. Now, if you got to as you say, the stage where it becomes 40-20 and 40 people being aware, 40 families aware of what's going on, then obviously the 20 that are, the other 20% or the other 20 families will probably start waking up, because they will see that the majority of people are beginning to talk about it on a day-to-day basis. So maybe it's kind of the 100 monkeys.
It doesn't matter if they're waking up, once they don't bloody object.
Yeah, I suppose that's it. We got more questions for you there.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, you're right about the people. Some people, they'll never wake up. But I think if the majority of people are awake and are willing to stand up and have their voice heard and make a change and be proactive, then I think the people who are asleep, they'll just go, I find anyway, they just kind of go with the status quo anyway. So whatever is kind of most popular on the given day, a lot of them seem to just tend to go with that. You know, the government is introducing water meters and property tax and all that. Some people go, actually, you have to pay it. You know, if the majority were saying tomorrow, okay, we don't have to pay it and blah, 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 then you probably find a lot of people go, oh, okay, well, you don't have to pay it. You know, they're just kind of, they're easily swayed. It's like barley in the wind or something.
Yeah.
Whatever way the wind blows is the way they'll go.
The floating voters, as they call them.
Yeah. Anyway, a question came in earlier on. Well, I suppose it wasn't really a question, but I'm gonna formulate it into a question as best I can. It came in from a name on the chat who I've never seen before, Akia. I don't know if it's an actual name or an acronym. I don't know. But in relation to the cars being taken, Finbar, we've heard about this before, and IKEA says, it is illegal for them to take your car. It is up to you to take those guards to court and prosecute them. You will win. What's your thoughts on that?
I have looked into this, and I pressed a pause button because of certain other things that are going on at the moment that I don't want to talk about on air. But I have looked into this with other people. I've looked at the aspects of the Treaty of Rome, of Bunrat na HÉireann, different things, and there is no doubt a case to be answered. Not just at an individual. I think it's important that individual Gardaí are fearful of their own positions, their own personal positions, in terms of the law, so that they start enacting things when they're given a choice between doing something or not doing something. Say they might get together and say, "Hey, Sarge, well, listen, look what happened to the guy down the country," you know. But at the moment, I haven't progressed it, but I have informed myself, and I do intend on progressing it.
Yeah, because it depends on who you ask. Sometimes you'll ask some people, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, get the name of the guard." And they're acting outside the jurisdiction, and you can take them to court and prosecute them. Then other people are saying, as has been said many times on the chat here, that once you register your car, you technically, now I know you don't give ownership away, but you register it to the government, and these people, the likes of the guards, they're acting allegedly on behalf of the government. So therefore, some people are saying you can't do anything about it because you've registered the car and you have a driver's license. You're in the game. You're playing their game and you're playing with their rules.
I wouldn't know too much detail about it, but I think if you're just offhand, if you register a car, you're putting your name on the car, are you not?
No, if you register your car, you're volunteering to go into their system. And although it says you're a registered keeper, it means that you're agreeing. We spoke to Sarah, the lioness, a couple of weeks ago regarding this, and she said you're by you insuring your car and registering your car and having car tax, you're buying into their system and you're agreeing to their system. And this is where they have us. Now, I know people have gone down the Freeman route where they've said, well, I've unregistered my car and I don't have insurance and I don't have car tax. And before you know it, they're up in front of a judge and the car's taken off them. Yeah. And I don't know anybody. I know people have tried it, but I don't really know anybody. And if anybody does, let us know who was successful in doing that. Because
but the arguments about the Treaty of Rome appear more palatable to judges than other arguments, in the sense that allegedly under the Treaty of Rome they can't seize goods of a greater value than that which is or may be owed, and that it's not up to a Gardaí to make a judicial decision, which is another aspect of it, again, in terms of human rights, and also, I believe, Bernard Naharan. It's not up to a Gardaí to make judicial decisions on what the value is or what is owed or etc., and that the seizure of the car is, for a number of reasons, illegal. And those arguments appeared on the face of it, and I did do some initial investigation, to be something that would be palatable to a judge, and which is reported to have succeeded in Donegal.
That's right. Yeah, I did hear that. They've had some success with that in Donegal. But you were talking about the Treaty of...
was it the Treaty of Rome?
Yeah, because the Treaty of I think the Queen's going to be signing the Treaty of Nice, the last part, on the 1st of November, which gives us Napoleonic... Sorry?
She didn't bloody invite me.
No, I'm afraid she didn't invite anybody, but she's going to be signing that on the 1st of November, which means we're going to be under EU rule rather than common law rule. And it's going to be Napoleonic law, which is everything's illegal unless it's deemed legal, rather than common law, which is everything's legal unless it's deemed illegal. And this is the switch they're going to do. And apparently what they're saying is that they're going to have the false flags and what have you before November 1st, so they kind of sneak that in the back door while everybody's concerned about, what's going on globally. Now, again, I don't know whether that's going to happen or not, but this is what some people are saying out there in the alternative media, that they're going to do the old sleight of hand trick, and they'll keep people busy of things going on globally while she signs that off, and then, before we know it, we're in a totalitarian system. So
I think we would have to. There's no way that the media could keep covered such a seismic shift in our legal perspective, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but they control the media. That's the thing. I mean, if the media do report it, I mean, they'll probably have a little page 11 in the corner type of thing. They won't be, or they'll write it in such a way that's kind of a matter of fact type of thing, because the media are controlled. I mean, it's obvious.
Oh, I fully agree. Yeah, but just in terms of where there was a time. And again, I said this at the beginning, there was a time that the media were it. I think because of social media, there's certain stories that eventually they just do have to cover. I think there'd be a big... The shift would affect criminal law. And barristers and solicitors make money on criminal matters. Not so much now, I think it's banking matters. But I think the impact on them, that their clients would automatically be presumed guilty of anything, I think there would be a big enough outcry from that side that we wouldn't normally see giving out about what we would consider people-centred subjects.
Well, it's not so much them actually, as soon as she signs it, bringing in the laws, But you know the way they have these ancient laws, like over in London they have these hackney cab rules where a hackney cab has to carry a bale of hay in the cab. For if you're a hackney cab in whatever guise, you have to carry a bale of hay for the horse. Now this was before they had taxi cabs, and your taxi cab was a horse. Now these are laws that are still in place but yet never being used. So I'm not saying that if the Queen signs it that they're going to bring all these rules in, but they'll be there to be used whenever they need to use them.
Well, I think any move like that, as somebody who's been an activist a while, although I hear things that are going to sometimes have a negative impact on people for a short term, I also, in a way, say to myself, bring it on, because people will cop on quicker.
Yeah.
And if they were to do something like that, I suspect the inference is that what they're trying to do is facilitate further criminalization of the population to be able to have greater control and the use of fear. And if that's their objective, every spring action has a reaction, and bring it on.
But the thing is, we have to have peaceful protesting. What do you call it? Peaceful disobedience, because they want anarchy. They want to have the curfews on the streets. And what we don't want to be doing is, getting violent with it. I know it's very hard for some people, because it makes you very angry to what's going on. But we would be playing straight into their hands if we did that.
Oh, in terms of violence, absolutely. But in terms of civil disobedience, in terms of actually creating, and I see it all around me all the time, just a whole new culture being created around me that just has, in one way or another, aspects of people's lives that they're actually breaking away from the system, and not their entire lives, but just aspects. For instance, most of my friends' kids will not drink tap water because of fluoride. They just won't. And if you actually went to give them tap water, they go, and they run away. And that's a great thing to see there. And just there is a whole culture that is breaking away now, and bit by bit, and is creating its own way of doing things. And these new changes, threats, things like that, just, in my mind, it just speeds it up.
Yeah, well, I think it is. I think that things are speeding up and people are waking up. Tell us a bit more about what you've been doing with the Louth Land League and what.
I hope my comments so far, they're all personal comments so far and have nothing to do with the Louth Land League.
No, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. That's okay, no problem. But tell us a bit more about any successes or what you're working on and how things have been going.
Yeah, I think there's a few of us in County Louth, particularly in Dundalk, who have been going to national meetings and have been heavily involved in new movements that have come and gone over the last, we'll say, 6 years. And it's a part of an evolutionary process. And we all grow and we mature and we come to learn to do things in different ways. And a culmination of that has been, development of the Louth Land League as a part of the wider Land League and in the context of the historical Land League. And I think the penny has dropped with us that going to national level meetings of anything, but not going home and creating it at a local level, is not really doing it. That we need to start really putting our energies at a local level first and creating something there before we start putting all of our energies into doing things at a national level. And so we came up with a model or a plan on how we were going to do this as the Land League, the Louth Land League. And we have been doing loads of legal stuff with people and just as much non-legal but correspondence work with people who are in debt. And we've been turning the MARP process from people coming in 2.5 years ago with a letter seeking voluntary sale, and they're still in the same position in MARP today. So it's not just legal things, it's how you correspond and stuff like that as well. But how do we convey that to all these people who were cited earlier as not turning up in court? How do we do that? As a plan, at a local level, we need to contact these people. So what we did first of all was we got a few interested people that we knew around the county, but people who were in debt as well and had contacted us and wanted help and had got a little bit of confidence by learning how to write letters through us. And we got them together around a round table, might I add, and we come up with a little strategy. And the first thing on the list was to create clinics, to be able to, in each town in the county, to be able to have one full day and a dedicated phone number where people can phone us, come into our clinics, have a chat to us, and start putting up a defence in court or corresponding and making things as difficult as possible for the banks as the stand at the moment. And trying to, at the same time, bring these people into a social environment. So it's not just going to an office on your own and having a meeting. That's the way it starts. But bringing them into wider social networks and groups that together will eventually, hopefully, have a block force that will have a negotiating strength of arm that's not there for people in debt at the moment. And even at only a county-wide level is what we're aiming at. So we have a clinic tomorrow, and we plan to have a lunchtime between 1 and 2. We plan to close up at about 4:30, but now the clinic has to run from 9 until 6 because of all the bookings that we have, and we haven't even advertised yet.
Wow.
And these are all new people who've just heard us of word of mouth. Now, how do we get these places? How do we set up these clinics? The next thing was, a couple of the guys that were coming to us had small businesses in the town. So we got talking to them, and we got business owners that donated their offices. So people are going in through a shop, and so it doesn't even look like they're going in to a dedicated office for people who deal with debt. Because you know a lot of people have, at the initial stage, have this fear and this pride thing and this shame thing.
Yeah.
So it's working. That's working really well for us. But to get the clinics up and running, we've had to train people to work in the clinics. And then so you have to ask, well, what do we train and all that kind of stuff, I suppose, and how do you do that? Now, myself and some friends around the country were giving workshops in Mullingar, not radical workshops, not, I'm all for people testing the law and trying to apply things in the law, but most homeowners that come to us don't want to be in any way used as a test, if you know what I mean. Although to a degree, everything is a test these days in front of idiosyncratic judges. But we just wanted to present what is a defence, how do you create... the first module, actually, is about what is a letter? And we start from the point that you just barely can read and write. What is a letter? What does critical analysis mean? How do you look at a letter without accepting everything in it? Take every single line, and there's 5 different things you look for. We could talk about it another day, but certain 5 things, and we teach them how to sit beside the letter with 5 sheets of paper and a heading on each one, and go through, because they're the things that when you put it on your notes will so we start from the very beginning, and over a period of, I would say, 4 workshops, we went from people who were afraid to put their name on a letter to people who were writing the most fantastic letters off to the banks. So we were thinking, Jesus, my goodness, I didn't even think of that, you know. So, and these were people who had such a fear of paper. Then we move on to the legal stuff. What is a defence? What is an affidavit? How do you draw up an affidavit? What would you allege into the future against banks? How do you maximise the time? So instead of making it a second visit at the registrars, that it's actually we've been in the courts for 2 years and we're not near settlement. How do you drag that out so that the banks overall, because on the one hand are doing individual work and in the courts, but on the other hand trying to create that block that I spoke about earlier, that the banks will be forced to go and talk to the block because the courts are not working.
That
sounds at a local level is what we're aiming for.
And would you help people with the likes of the property tax and all that kind of stuff, or are you
No, we stick straight. You know, there is a desire in everybody, because we all know so many things are. But for the Land League, at a local level, we want to keep it refined to what it is, because at the moment and there always will be manpower issues, because the amount of communications with us over the last few weeks is just phenomenal, and it's great to see it coming in, but we have to manage that. So to take on other things now, we'd love to, but it's not there.
Okay, so there's a possibility down the road maybe that will come on. Okay, we have about 10 minutes or so left. We have a few questions come in there. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, Finbar, Mick from Liffey Sound. Again, anyone who is in the Lucan area can listen to Mick's own show on Monday evenings 9 to 10 on liffeysound.ie. Just give that a plug for you, Mick.
And Karen's on tomorrow night, I think. And
yeah, Karen Quinn Tostado is also being interviewed by Mick tomorrow evening, so that'll be one to tune into. But Mick has a question. With all that you've been doing, the efforts that you've been making, Finbar, have you had much hassle from the authorities?
Have we had much hassle? I tell you, we were outside Dundalk Courthouse 2 months ago on a Monday morning, chilly old Monday morning, and we were handing out leaflets to people that were going in. Only 5 people turned up. That was the morning that there was 135 repossession cases and 5 turned up. And we'd been there for about 2.5 hours, and a very shy and awkward-looking member of the Garda Síochána in his 40s came out, and he said, lads, and remember, we don't cause hassle or any business like that. Shirt and tie, everything else. This guard came out and he said, lads, I think some of the lads inside may come out to ask you to move. So it may be better if you've moved on now. So I says to the guard, would you go and ask the lads inside why we would have to move, and if there's any legislation or even a rule that we're breaking, and if that can be cited to us, sure, we'll be gone. So he went inside, and we were left in a situation where we were about to leave. But now we had to hang on, because we were waiting for this guard to come out to see what was going to happen. We weren't going to give up.
Yeah.
And we hung on for about half an hour, and nobody came out. Now, in Dundalk, we are quite well known, and we're known that we don't instigate violence. There was one attempted eviction in which there was some kerfuffle, and I was arrested, etc. And that was purely, I was arrested for utterances. And there was a perception of a shuffle put out by the media. And, you know, the Gardaí did become involved in that. But apart from that, we haven't had any, because we're finding that quite often there's nods and winks and, sure, lads, we know what yous are at and we support yous, but we're just going to stay on the sidelines. And that's grand with us, stay on the sidelines.
Well, that's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. If the guards, because, you know, I think people have to understand as well, and I can speak from what I've heard, that there's guards struggling as well. There's some guards sleeping in the stations because they can't afford to drive home. They don't have the petrol.
Didn't steal €500 off his colleagues for the crack of it.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah. And that did happen during the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He gave it back, so we didn't have time to spend it. So it shows maybe that it wasn't for a vice, that he had a purpose for it, and he probably needed it. And even as a young fella, when I was watching the movies with the good guys and the bad guys, I always had a little bit of sympathy for the bad guys too sometimes, you know. And even with that guard, he's in an awful position, and whatever position he's in, it comes down to money and the lack thereof.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Because they are struggling. I mean, I've heard that some guards have like 20 quid to last them for the week, and that includes petrol. And, you know...
It's a dangerous combination, power and debt.
Yeah, but see, this is the problem, you see, because that means that guards are more susceptible to backhanders and padded envelopes.
Oh, yeah, and even worse.
You know, and I believe there was a case during the week that a guard was actually done for being involved in something like that. Some kind of racket that went on. I think I've seen it on Facebook. I won't say anything more than that because I don't know I didn't know the facts off the top of my head. I'd have to go and read it. But there was the highlight or the title was that there was a guard involved with doing something like that. But you're always going to get bad apples, you know. But as I say, it's great to see that people are beginning to wake up. I mean, we'll kind of wind things up now at the moment, but it's great to see so many people waking up, and brilliant work that you're doing with the Land League. If you could get in touch with them other people and get them in and just tie up the courts. Yeah, because we've heard that the High Court is near breaking point anyway.
Oh, I was in there just before it's closed, a couple of days before it closed, and it was like a scene from Victorian London. The place was packed, as if you were at a concert, all waiting for the judge to come out. And when he came out, everybody was shouting at him. And the question arises, how could justice be dispensed? How could anybody, never mind a nervous person who's on the verge of breaking down, present a defence in such an atmosphere? It was. So, I'd love if I had our animation skills to do an 18th century satire of it in cartoon, you know, because that's, if you had seen it, it was unbelievable, and that's what we want to happen. And there's from the debt options to so many other legal ways to challenge your banks over the last few years. That is the result of it, and that was one of the main objectives, I think, from a lot of these movements. Now we need to do it at a circuit court level and leave them with no other option but come to the table to talk en masse. That this is not going to be solved by people going in like lost sheep or like scared mice into banking offices and signing pieces of paper and agreements that they know they can't stick to. Yeah. It's not going to be solved like that. It's going to be solved by people getting together. I've seen men who have developed, one man developed, I just won't identify him, developed a form of Tourette syndrome. from his debt. A man who was quite respected in his community because of his debt and his failure or his inability to talk to anybody about it because he had been a successful businessman. And he had developed a form of Tourette's. It's gone. It's gone because he started to come to our monthly meetings. And it's where he knows everybody's in the same boat. You can talk and you can fucking blind about them after the business has been dealt with.
Yeah.
You know, and the symptoms have gone.
Well, that's brilliant. Well, we'll wind up there, Finbar. Listen, thanks again for coming on the show. Brilliant information. And we're gonna get you back on because I think this is a very important subject that we need to get you on and get a regular update of what you're up to and all the kind of groups that we try and get in and talk to them because I mean OYM we cover a lot of subjects and we it's a very big genre that we cover. We cover everything, and that's why we call ourselves Open Your Mind, because we want people to look at everything. But this is obviously, close to home with everything that's going on. But again, thanks, Finbar. I'm going to pass you over to Steve, and Steve's going to get all your details off you there.
That's no problem.
Yeah, again, the information, Finbar, it's been powerful information. I've just dropped you a message into the Skype box there as well. There are some questions that we didn't get to ask you, and there are a lot of people on the chat saying the great information and asking, can you come back on for a part 2? So I think that we will definitely have to have you on for a part 2 because the information is great. I mean, it's great when we have people on who have good information, but a lot of times the information that we're getting, sometimes it's from the UK, sometimes it's from further afield, and we have to try to translate it into Irish terms. But you're one of our own, and you're on the ground. You're speaking the language that the people understand, and I think fantastic. But can you give us if you have the website, Facebook page, or any social media there?
The Louth Land League, and I want to emphasise that although there is a national land league, the Louth Land League, and we emphasise that other local groups should always remain to a degree autonomous and should always keep themselves going and moving and not depend on a centre for anything, because who knows what can happen in the future, and you can only rely on your own at a local level. And I think if people start at that level before they start building up to other things. So I'll give out contact details for the Louth Land League in that context. That may sound odd, but having been in movements for the last 6 or 7 years, myself and other people in the Louth Land League, we think it's important that we know that we can stick together at a local level before we start broadening out. And if everybody starts at that, my goodness, we're going to have a great movement in Ireland and even beyond in the next few years. So the Louth Land League can be contacted on Facebook through the Louth, Louth, Land, Landleague Facebook page. And we also have a landline number, a mobile number dedicated, which is 089 474 0811. So that's 089 474 0811. And even if you're not in County Louth, we are at the moment taking calls from all over the country, and we'll try to put you in connection with somebody in your local area.
Okay, that's great information. I have the Facebook address here, and I have the phone number. I'm going to get that up on screen ASAP for people to take it down.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, we'll go up to a musical break. Stay with us there, Finbar, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Yes, that's exactly who it is, OYM Radio. And that was Alan Carna. ALIN, Alan Carna. And Put Your Hands in the Earth. Great song. One of us. So he is. Good. All around good guy.
Good man. Okay, that was Finbar Markey from the County Louth Land League, doing a brilliant job over there. And we want to get more people on from local groups and talk about what they're doing and the positive side, constructive. It'd be great to have them on, and talk about what they're doing. Now, don't forget about the Irish Water Challenge rather than about the Ice Bucket Challenge. Okay, so the Irish Water Challenge is the same thing. Okay, you get your bucket, but in the bucket you have the paperwork from Irish Water, and as somebody pours it over your head, it falls out of the bucket. You catch it, and you put your return to sender sticker on it, and then you nominate 3 people to do it. So that's the Irish Water Challenge, and once the paperwork comes in, myself and Steve are going to be doing it, and I'm going to be nominating people to do it. Rather than have the Ice Bucket Challenge, we'll have the Irish Water Challenge, and that's what we'll do. Now, next week, our guest is going to be, thanks to a listener who gave us this contact, by the way. If there are guests on that you think would be good having on, by all means send us an email. And a listener, I forget who it was, I'm sorry, but we're going to have Leo Sagami on the show, and he's an author, writer, and basically he's been involved with Illuminati and the powers to be. And to a stage where I think they actually tortured him and did various things like that. So it's going to be very interesting. He is Italian. I'll have to brush up my Italian. And oui. No, that's French.
Yeah. He's a good singer too, isn't he?
So we'll just confirm Leo for next week, but that should be good because I'm sure he'll have a mindful of information on what the powers to be are doing and what's going on, and it's always good to check that out. Next week also, next Saturday, we have the United We Strike Radio Marathon, starting off with Detlev in Germany, and I'll be taking over at 6 o'clock GMT and doing the producing. Myself and Steve will have a show at 7 maybe, if you're around.
Yes.
For half an hour?
Well, see, now that I know, I can book it in.
Okay, good. Into your busy schedule. Okay, and so we'll be doing that next week. United We Strike Radio Marathon. So don't forget that. UnitedWeStrike.com is the website. You can check out all the information there. But that's really it for us for the week. If there's any other news, check out our Facebook page, and if you haven't done that, pop over and just like us there, because we do post things on the Facebook page that we don't post up on YouTube. Obviously, we kind of keep YouTube for the shows and stuff like that, but day-to-day news that comes in, we do tend to post that up. Now, there was a posting that we put up. If you remember, we had a chap on called Michael Benicia, and Michael actually posted up information regarding the signing of this Nice Treaty. So I recommend you pop over to Facebook and have a look at that, because it was quite kind of frightening to say that, you know, if things like this happening, they'd talk about World War III and inscriptions. Anybody under the age of 40 and over the age of 16 will be conscripted. And so it's a bit worrying if that's the case, if that happens. But then I've heard the good news is that, you know, World War III is not going to happen because, you know, there's certain things in place that's going to stop that from happening. So who do you believe? I tend to use a website called, if you look up this website, it's called Before the News. And if you go over Before the News, they tend to have a lot of information about a lot of different subjects. Again, you don't have to believe it, it's just purely information, but it's out of interest. And there's a few YouTube channels that you could check out one is called AMTV. There's an American guy does be on there, and then Dabu7 is another one. End Times 23 is another one. There's quite a few out there, but there are a few sites that I would look at just to see what they're saying and what's going on, and any information that you come across. If there is anything that you come across, by all means, email us and let us know. And if we have information regarding James Gilliland and Sept, obviously we'll let you know as well. There's a few things going on with that with the background, but we don't want to go any further with that until we sort out a few things first, so we'll keep you posted. But that's really the news. What do you have planned for the week, Steve?
I'll be honest with you, I'm just going to get more information. Well, if I can get more information on maybe simplifying the return to sender method. And again, I know, like some people say, it's an easy solution. Well, it's not an easy solution. I know you can write letters as well, but I think once you understand the process of the return to sender, putting the sticker on it says everything that you need to say. It's just a simple way of doing it. I know, like even what Finbar was saying, you should be able to sit down, open the letter they send you, and go through it line by line, analyse it, and come up with a great response, you know, to start creating the paper trail. But not everyone can do that, so not everyone is comfortable with that. But the two ladies in work that I mentioned earlier at the top of the show, who I gave the information to, I mean, I will try and get them more information. Now that they've shown an interest, I'm not going to bombard them, but I will try and find some more information that will help maybe even simplify the process for them, so that they really, really, really understand. Because who knows where it could go. I mean, it could be water meters today, it could be something else tomorrow, and it's nice to know that there are people out there who are willing to open their minds, I suppose. So I'll just concentrate on that, see what else happens. I know this date's been bandied about, and there's a couple of dates for next week as well. One happens to fall on my son's birthday, so we'll see what happens there. I know there are plans. Well, we've heard that there's supposed plans for 9/11. And I think there's another couple of dates beginning of the week as well. So look, I just take it as it comes. That's really all you can do. We can just kind of, you know, Just get up, put your pants on, one leg at a time.
Okay.
Take what life throws at you.
See what happens. If anybody knows of any office space, just in case, or somewhere where we can share in Kells, where we can actually set up a hub for a few hours a week, like a clinic, it'd be much appreciated if you can contact us and let us know. It'd be great to be able to have that facility out in Kells as well for people. But okay, from myself, Alan James, take it easy, have a good week, stay safe. If there's any news, let us know. Check out the Facebook page, and we'll catch you later. Take care. Bye bye.
Yeah, and we also wanted to mention as well, and I think we had a little technical difficulty at the beginning of the show, but we did want to throw out best wishes to Kira, who's taking up she's doing the 7 to 9 slot on PIR this evening. We want to say best of luck to her, break a leg. I think she's going to be taking up a regular slot on Saturday, I believe, from midnight to 2 a.m. So there we go. Okay, from myself, Stephen George, we'll do it all again next week. Take care, and bye-bye.
Open your mind.